City officials in St. Louis stated a controversial Confederate monument will be dismantled. The granite and bronze memorial will be removed from the Missouri Civil War Museum, though it will be placed at a new location. According to a copy of the agreement between the city and the museum, the memorial must be placed at a Civil War battlefield or cemetery outside of the city. The 32-foot memorial will be removed by the end of the week, with the museum paying for the cost of removal. A report from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch indicates that workers have already begun to take apart the monument in a city park.
A man from Mississippi is taking his argument about the state's flag to the Supreme Court. According to court documents, attorneys for Carlos Moore will take their case against the Confederate-themed flag for violating the Constitution's guarantee of equal protection to all citizens. Mississippi's is the last state flag to feature the Confederate emblem. His attorneys added that Moore's argument challenges that emblem as a symbol of white supremacy, which harms the community. They stated the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling against Moore allows a city or county to use the emblem as a symbol of white supremacy.
Syria has backed down, faced with the revival of the Franco-American Red Lines in Syria, and is no longer preparing a sarin attack on areas under rebel control. U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis says it appears that Syria had heeded the U.S. warning issued on Monday that it would not let a new chemical attack go unanswered. The Syrian Ministry for National Reconciliation denied that it was making such preparations at the Al-Shairat airbase, the same base that was used for an alleged chemical attack in April, and repeated the claim Syria possessed no chemical weapons. The Russians also came to Syria's defense, denouncing the warning and dismissing the White House assertions that a strike was being prepared as unacceptable, further raising tension between the two.
This week, the White House issued a firm statement, a warning to Syria after it was picked up that Assad, his regime, was preparing potentially for another chemical weapons attack. You amplified that message yourself. Have we seen Assad's regime take any steps in response to that warning?
Well, I can tell you that due to the president's actions, we did not see an incident. What we did see before was all of the same activity that we had seen prior for the April 4th chemical weapons attack. And so I think that by the president calling out Assad, I think by us continuing to remind Iran and Russia that while they choose to back Assad, that this was something we were not going to put up with. So I would like to think that the president saved many innocent men, women, and children.
U.S. Pacific Forces warning that ISIS terrorists are now looking to open a new front in Southeast Asia. The admiral saying the battle in the southern Philippines last May has been a wake-up call for that region. So you had this matter in Europe where trained fighters were going to Iraq and Syria and going home, and we have seen what they have done in Brussels and in Paris and in London. Is this effect happening now in places like the Philippines?
Well, it's happening, and it's much more dangerous. Europe will ultimately be able to contain its Islamist terror threat. It'll sputter on. But you're talking about a belt of nations from looking westward from the Philippines, back to Indonesia, Brunei, Malaysia, India with its large Muslim population, Pakistan, astride the world's shipping lanes. These are largely Muslim-majority nations. The concentration, the largest percentage of Muslim population in the world in that belt. And the radicalization had been contained, but now with ISIS recruits coming back and also non-locals flooding into what are now viewed as terrorist safe havens, this has the potential to really explode.
Red faces at Berlin's police department after hundreds of officers deployed to help secure next month's G20 summit in Hamburg were sent home after reports of wild partying. Peter Oliver reports.
In just over 2 weeks, Germany will be conducting one of the biggest security operations in its recent history as the G20 summit arrives in Hamburg. Police from all over the country have been drafted in, but it's one particular group from right here in Berlin that have hit the headlines.
The Hamburg police informed us that hundreds of forces did not behave properly there, and therefore they sent them back to Berlin.
It's alleged that as many as 300 officers are being sent home after excessive partying at the former refugee centre that they were being housed in. This included scenes of heavy drinking, sex and public urination. The German tabloid newspaper Bild has some pictures of just before the party got really out of hand. As you can imagine, police chiefs involved in organising Hamburg are less than happy.
The forces are back in Berlin. With this action, the police commander has made it very clear that this kind of behaviour by officers is unacceptable. The Berlin police will now start a further examination of all facts and circumstances. The scale of consequences following the incident will be a result of these examinations.
While police getting caught letting their hair and, let's face it, just about everything else down may seem like a bit of a giggle, the security operation for the G20 is a huge deal.
The terrorist threat in Europe is at its highest for a generation, the highest in the past 20 years. The G20 meeting in Hamburg is, of course, a potential target for terrorists like any other important public event.
As thousands of demonstrators are getting ready to descend on Hamburg for the G20, and with the terror threat across Europe remaining high, this scandal couldn't really have come at a worse time.
The violent protests in Venezuela have now spread from the streets to the skies. Video footage posted on social media shows a police helicopter circling over Caracas, followed by what sounds like explosion and gunfire. The police officer which piloted the stolen aircraft says the president's days are numbered.
We demand you, President Nicolas Maduro, your immediate resignation together with your ministerial group, and to immediately call for general elections. You have two choices: be judged tomorrow by our conscience and the people, or begin today to free our people from this corrupt government.
The helicopter dropped grenades on the Supreme Court, which many criticize for strengthening President Maduro's hold on power.
I have activated the Bolivarian National Armed Forces to defend the right to peace, and I am sure that sooner or later we will capture the helicopter and those who have made this armed terrorist attack against the institutions of the country.
The helicopter attack capped a volatile 24 hours that began with widespread looting in the coastal city of Maracay on Monday night. Hundreds of supermarkets and pharmacies were looted, and government offices burned following anti-government protests. The violence continued on Tuesday when opposition lawmakers fought with security forces outside of Parliament. Journalists also rallied against censorship and the rise in attacks on people.
We have already gone past the 400 attacks mark, which is unforgivable in a country that claims to be democratic. We have to return to democracy. We have to return to the free exercise of information.
Those opposed to the government say they're determined to keep protests going until elections are called and the government is thrown out. Soaring inflation and widespread shortages of medicines, food and fuel have infuriated Venezuelans, who are struggling to afford even basic necessities. Both the opposition and Maduro have refused to back down, causing the violence across Venezuela to only grow worse.
The streets are pretty dirty. There's lots of trash around and it makes the streets smell, so it makes things a little bit unpleasant.
It's smelling and I don't like it, but I can understand the workers for the rubbish.
A momentous day in Colombia as President Juan Manuel Santos shared a stage with FARC leader Rodrigo Londoño to mark the end of the UN-monitored disarmament process and draw a line under 52 years of civil conflict. Today, June the 27th, will be a very special day for the majority of Colombians. A day never to forget. A day when weapons became words.
El día en que las armas se cambiaron por las palabras.
FARC will continue to exist, but will act as a political party and operate within the legal framework overseen by the state. Goodbye, weapons. Goodbye, war. Welcome, peace. Some 7,132 weapons have been handed over to the UN and will be melted down to produce memorial artwork.
The Philippine House of Representatives has passed a bill making enthusiastic singing of the national anthem mandatory. The bill passed with a vote of the 212 to 0 on June 26. The bill means singing along when the anthem is played in public is not only mandatory, but according to the Inquirer, quote, must be done with fervor. The bill also standardizes the beat and music to accompany the tune and requires schools to make sure students memorize the words. Breaking any of these rules could result in a fine of up to 100,000 Philippine pesos or $2,000. According to the BBC, violators will also have their name published in a national newspaper. Existing law regulating the national anthem doesn't make singing mandatory and carries a smaller maximum fine of 20,000 pesos. The bill must be passed by the Senate before becoming law.
The European Union formally extended its economic sanctions on Russia on Wednesday. The move was a widely expected step that keeps restrictions on businesses with Russian energy, defense, and financial sectors until January. The sanctions were imposed in July of 2014 after Russia's annexation of Ukraine's Black Sea Peninsula and Moscow's direct support for separatists in eastern Ukraine. Under the sanctions that were imposed with the United States, European companies are banned from doing business with or investing in Russia's defense and energy industries. Financial ties are also severely limited.
The head of NATO says defense spending could jump over 4% this year. The move shows pressure from President Donald Trump might be working. Trump has repeatedly called on other countries in the military alliance to share more of the financial burden. Mainly, Trump wants each country to meet the NATO benchmark and spend 2% of their GDP on defense, a mark all member states have promised to eventually reach. 25 countries plan to increase defense spending this year. Romania is on track to hit the 2% mark, and Latvia and Lithuania are predicted to reach that mark in 2018. But giving all the credit to Trump would be misleading. NATO's Secretary General notes while this would be the largest spending increase, this would also be the third year in a row non-U.S. members have given more. Former President Barack Obama was also critical of NATO members relying on the U.S. military budget for their security.
NASA scientists say they have not found proof of alien life. The U.S. Space Agency responded this week to rumors started by the hacking group known as Anonymous. Video posted on YouTube June 20th by Anonymous Global was accompanied by a headline titled, quote, Anonymous believes NASA is poised to announce discovery of aliens. A mass member of the group spends 12 minutes talking about old NASA quotes and alien theories.
Professor Thomas Zurbuchen, Associate Administrator of the Science Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters in Washington, said our civilization is on the verge of discovering evidence of alien life in the cosmos.
The Washington Post said the quote Anonymous referred to was taken out of context. Nevertheless, more than 2 million people have watched the video, leading NASA scientists to deny his claims. Zurbuchen tweeted June 26, quote, there's no pending announcement from NASA regarding extraterrestrial life.
WikiLeaks continues to reveal more of the alleged tools used by the CIA with the latest batch of documents showing how the U.S. intelligence agency collects data from PC users. For more details on this, let's go live now to RT's Colm McGlinchey. Hi there, Colm. What has been revealed about this particular malware? What is the story here?
Okay, well, what they released today is known as ELSA. It's the latest in a series of leaks from WikiLeaks they allege came from within the CIA, known as Fall 7. Now, ELSA, according to the documents that were released today, it allows the CIA to track the geolocation of the device, not by its GPS, but instead by its proximity to Wi-Fi access points. Now, this all came out today, and, you know, whereas The WikiLeaks have detailed that this, they claim in the documents it shows that it's any device running a Microsoft Windows device, even if the device doesn't have, even if it's not connected to the internet at the time, once it's connected, once it has Wi-Fi enabled, they can get the longitude, latitude, and timestamp of where it is based on Wi-Fi access points within its proximity, and then using publicly accessible databases like Google and Microsoft can then store this information, create a timestamp for it, to what WikiLeaks have described as a target device's pattern of life.
Top story. A producer for America's CNN News channel has apparently been filmed saying the network's Russia coverage is more about ratings than offering solid facts. Investigative journalism group Project Veritas has released a hidden camera video conversation. We're about to show you a clip, although RT's not yet been able to verify its authenticity.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
Because it's ratings?
Our ratings are incredible right now.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia is just like
could shit. I mean, it's mostly shit right now. Like, we don't have any big giant proof. I just feel like they don't really have it, but they want to keep digging. Mm-hmm. And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me. And the CEO of CNN said in our internal meeting, he said, good job, everybody, covering the climate accords, but we're done with it. Let's get back to Russia.
You might not need a standard flu shot to be protected against the respiratory illness in the future. Instead, flu vaccinations might look something like a Band-Aid. This microneedle patch was created by researchers at the Georgia Institute of Technology and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It features 100 microscopic dissolvable needles that contain a vaccine. All you have to do is press the patch to your skin. The patch was originally touted as a way to vaccinate against measles, but researchers decided to conduct a human clinical trial for a flu vaccine patch first. Participants were given either the patch, a standard flu shot, or a placebo. Researchers said the patch was just as effective in generating immunity against influenza, and more than 70% of people who received the patch reported they'd rather use it than get a shot or even use nasal flu spray. The CDC says only about 41% of American adults on average get the flu vaccine each year, but researchers hope the microneedle patch, which can be self-administered, will lead to an increase in that number. Similar microneedle patches are also being developed for vaccines against polio and rubella.
It's not part of a symphony orchestra yet, but the tunes this machine creates is music to your ears. The marimba-playing robotic musician with 4 arms, also known as Shimon, is able to listen to music and create his own songs. He was developed at the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta.
We are focusing on let's invent what will be the new equipment and the new technologies that can enhance music and can let people play and create music in completely new ways. One of them is building robots.
He uses artificial intelligence and large amounts of data to learn from artists like Beethoven and Lady Gaga.
We've trained the neural network with a database that consists of a wide variety of music, encompassing everything from jazz, classical, to pop music. What it's generating is almost like a fusion of these different styles.
Just like his human counterparts, it can be hard to decipher exactly where his inspiration comes from, unless you listen closely.
It's pretty complex, and we don't know exactly what's going on in his brain. I think that's what's fascinating about it.
Weinberg says the goal is not to replace, but to complement music created by humans. He hopes one day we could potentially enjoy a symphony created by both man and machine.
Whether a universal basic income would replace the social safety net already provided by state and federal governments or would supplement it is just one of the critical aspects of this plan that arouses debate, but the concept of a guaranteed income is undeniably experiencing a revival of sorts. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, as we just saw a short while ago on this program, endorsed the idea in his Harvard commencement address last month, and Tesla CEO Elon Musk has spoken in favor of it twice in recent months, with some credible projections forecasting 40 to 50% of all jobs in the United States today will be eliminated due to automation within the next 10 to 15 years. Futurists and labor market analysts are asking what will become of all those workers displaced by technology, and whether society at large, seeking stability in such a radically transformed economic environment, might not benefit from some orderly redistribution of wealth. An additional question is whether federal agencies like DARPA, the Pentagon's Advanced Research Projects Agency, should be using taxpayer funds to pursue robotics, i.e. the very projects that will displace those taxpayers from their jobs.
The challenge, I think, for public policy is to make sure that workers are equipped to work in the new kinds of jobs that the economy is creating. I think the wrong course of action is to throw in the towel and say, well, there's simply nothing that can be done, and there's going to be this large segment of society that can't contribute in the labor market.
There are fires raging all across the Southwest this week, at least 21 continuing to burn and more popping up each day. In Arizona, the Goodwin fire forced the town of Mayer about an hour and 15 minutes north of Phoenix to evacuate. The fire is currently only 1% contained, has burned 20,000 acres, and is very close to where 19 hotshots died 4 years ago battling the Yarnell Hill fire. As of this morning, at least 1,400 residents are waiting to return to their homes, and it comes as the weather conditions today are once again perfect to fuel the fire.
I will be honest, it's the worst feeling in my life. I've been through a lot, and never have I been this devastated to know that my home may not be there when I get back.
The Brian Head Fire in Utah is the largest wildfire burning in the Southwest. It's raced across almost 50,000 acres, destroyed more than a dozen homes, and is only 10% contained. More than 1,600 firefighters are on the ground trying to up the containment numbers. And in California, the Hill Fire, 200 miles northwest of Los Angeles, has burned nearly 1,600 acres. And TMZ is reporting that Big Bang Theory star Johnny Galecki's ranch burned to the ground Monday night. That fire is now 65% contained, and the biggest problems across the region are the conditions. It's hot, dry, and windy pretty much all across the Southwest.
Portugal has remembered the victims of the country's worst ever forest fires with a fundraising concert in Lisbon entitled Together for Everyone. Stars from Portugal's rich array of musical talent performed in a night of high emotion.
Para os bombeiros portugueses. Alguns perderam a vida.
Foi uma onda nacional única.
It's a rich and unique national wave. It's exceptional in such a short time. It shows what a great people we are. And tonight is an incentive to do more, every day, every night. This is the beginning of the rest of our lives.
Este é apenas o princípio do resto da nossa vida.
The wildfires claimed the lives of 62 people in the central Pedrógão Grande region. Hundreds of firefighters battled the intense blaze. 4 are among the 54 people injured.